What we wear says a lot about who we are. Yet fashion is also a $2.5 trillion industry that touches everyone on Earth. I'm Imran Ahmed. I first started trying to make sense of the fashion business 15 years ago, as it was being transformed by technology, globalization, and shifting consumer values. And so stuff like this would just end up in a landfill.
Yeah.
Now I'm on a journey to see how fashion is recalibrating after the pandemic to balance profit with purpose. This is the Business of Fashion show. Join me to discover how fashion shapes business, culture, and identity, and to meet the people forging fashion's future. Well, I'm back here in Paris for the first time in 16 months, and it's the first time the global fashion community is really getting together since March 2020. It's Haute Couture Week, the most exclusive, most elaborate, and most creative event on the fashion calendar. This is a world of rules and traditions, of exquisite workmanship and high net worth clients able to pay 6 figures for a gown. Do you buy couture?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yet the trailblazing designers we're about to meet may not be what you expect. Among them, a true disruptor in fashion, the man who made a billion-dollar industry out of ugly sneakers, is staging Balenciaga's first couture show in over 50 years.
How are you?
We had an exclusive preview.
Couture, for me, has something very modern in its concept because we only produce what somebody orders. This is like the most sustainable way of consuming.
And the rising star of Paris, whose highly creative collections place the planet before profit, embedding sustainability into her design process.
We really have to think about the planet that we are destroying every day. So I was hoping that maybe, some of the people of the fashion industry were thinking about that.
But to really understand what's happening in Paris this week, it's important to take stock of the last 18 months. 2020 was the worst year in the history of modern luxury. Before that, annual revenues for the luxury fashion market topped $380 billion. More than 2/3 of growth was buoyed by the Chinese, at home, but especially as tourists abroad. The lion's share of revenues came from accessories, especially handbags, with designer sneakers catching up. Then, Wuhan, China locked down. COVID hit Europe during the 2020 spring fashion show season. Giorgio Armani live-streamed his show from an empty theater in Milan. But other brands forged on, with shows packed full of fashion insiders. In a global business so interconnected, unforeseen consequences of the pandemic came to light. Delayed weddings led to canceled embroidery orders out of Paris, threatening the livelihoods of the Karigar artisans of India. Luxury revenues plunged by more than 20%. Companies cut costs, but by the end of 2020, COVID-19 had still devastated industry profitability. Fashion was forced to adapt, using technology to drive creative and business innovation. The fashion business was reimagined through distance selling, online films, and virtual fashion. The luxury industry bounced back, dominated by the mega brands Hermès and Chanel, and the mega groups LVMH, Kering, and Richemont. By the first half of 2021, revenues for some of the biggest names were up as much as 40% on pre-pandemic levels, delivering record profits. From an economic perspective, these super winners are emerging from the pandemic even stronger. Now, there is a reawakening in Paris, the global capital of luxury fashion. It's a historical echo. The last time fashion burst back to life here was after World War II, with the sensation that was Christian Dior's new look. It will take more than a new silhouette to transform the fashion industry now. I mean, the big question for me is really, where does the industry go from here? And how does it need to adapt and change to be kind of fit for this new world that we're entering? To find out more about this reawakening, I met with a fashion insider with his finger on the creative pulse of Parisian fashion. Pierre!
Hey Imran,
Hey!
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Pierre Alexandre Impele, also known as Pamboy, caught the ear of fashion insiders for his honest online fashion critiques. Is that an earring?
Yeah, it's Alan Crosetti. It's like a little rose. I was like, fashion moment.
Yeah. Now, he collaborates with the respected fashion editor Katie Grand at Perfect, a fashion media company founded amid the pandemic. What is La Perle? Like, why did you pick this place? Who comes here?
Everyone, it's, designers, and, we always joke about, dress well and come to La Perle and you'll get an internship or you'll find a job.
In the 1960s or 70s, there was no luxury industry, But now luxury is this, global industry. What's the role of luxury?
I mean, I think the role of luxury is to preserve craftsmanship. We tend to, look down on manual work and craft, and I think luxury, if anything, has always been about that. Going back to Louis XIV in France and how he developed, the French fashion industry as we know it today.
As you think about the fashion industry we want to create for the future, do you feel like there's actually real change happening, or is it at the surface?
I mean, I feel like changing the structures of power in the industry and how they interconnect. I feel like companies need to take risks. They need diversity and inclusion. I feel like fashion is a global conversation. Everyone is concerned,
I don't think that would have happened if it weren't for the pandemic.
I mean, Paris felt weird, between the pandemic and the whole conversation about Black Lives Matter, which was something very new in France. I feel like as soon as we started talking about systemic racism in the industry, a lot of people reached out to me and came to realize that fashion is also about how do we want society to be. For example, in the 60s, with the sexual revolution and women started wearing miniskirt, that was fashion changing society and shaping society and pushing new ideas about womanhood and what a woman could be. And now with menswear, there's been a lot of conversation about masculinity, what it means to be a man. And I think that it's questions that fashion can answer. Fashion is probably the best, medium to answer those questions. I always say it's time to open the windows. We need a fresh breeze of newness to kind of, swipe through the industry.
It really does feel like change is the watchword here as I caught up with top designers and creatives in town for Paris Fashion Week.
Everyone was talking about a reset. Are we going back
to where we were? I hope not, personally, but I mean, changes are subtle. I mean, the truth of the matter is we've got centuries and decades of this fashion world and fashion business, and hopefully the mentalities evolve.
Okay.
And I don't think we should go back completely to where we were.
There is it's a big movement going into that opening of different gender and also races, all that opening. The majority is for the opening and the minority is the ones that are against it. That is the big change.
男の人とか女の人とか年齢も若いとかオールドとか関係なくて似合う人に着せました。
I think that the clientele in the past 2 years, it's gone from being a very Western clientele, actually, and one really rooted and based in the United States, to being much more global.
Creativity needs to be balanced with business. The most crucial decision any fashion CEO makes is the selection of a creative director who can inform the entire universe of the brand. Not just the collections and the clothes, but also the stores, the advertising, and in the digital age, the social media strategy. The legendary designer Karl Lagerfeld was creative director at Fendi for more than half a century and had a lifelong contract with Chanel, where he worked until he died in 2019. But more recently, designers have been switching sides at a fast clip, akin to soccer managers in transfer season netting the right striker. Although in this game, when talents transfer between historic houses, it's known to insiders as musical chairs. When Balenciaga's parent company, Kering, acquired the brand in 2001, it was doing only $17.3 million in revenue. That has all changed.
Analysts say it's doing almost 2 billion euros in sales, which makes it one of the biggest, most important fashion houses in the world.
A large part of this success is down to its creative director, Demna Gvasalia, who has injected his dystopian vision into the brand, with experience honed at the Antwerp Academy of Fine Arts, Maison Martin Margiela, and Louis Vuitton. From Georgian refugee to master fashion disruptor, Demna is part of a group of designers including Virgil Abloh and Kim Jones, who brought the streetwear phenomenon to the highest levels of European fashion. He's the creative mind behind Balenciaga's first couture show in more than 50 years.
This is the 50th couture collection, because Mr. Balenciaga himself did 49 collections. So this is the 50th collection. It's Demna's first couture collection. And so it's probably the most important, most anticipated moment of this couture week. And we're getting the first look at it. It's like the gate to couture.
That's correct.
Yeah. So they're about to start the fittings. They have to allocate which model is going to wear which look. But now the fittings have also become a moment to capture content to share later. So there's a whole photograph setup as well. And you can just tell by the energy in here, there's lots of anticipation because some of the looks are being revealed for the first time. Nobody in the whole world outside this building has seen this collection.
An émigré himself, Cristobal Balenciaga shaped the fashion scene through the 1940s and 50s with his sculptural masterpieces until he shuttered the house in 1968.
How are you feeling?
Good. Very
Ready?
excited. Now it's the moment, actually, the hardest one where I cannot change anything anymore. I can just shorten the length.
So you're not one of the ones who changes things the night before?
No, but in couture also you can't.
Okay.
Our interview takes place in the recently restored Balenciaga Couture Salon, where tomorrow, in a show with just 128 attendees, including Kanye West, Lewis Hamilton, and Kering chairman and CEO François-Henri Pinault, Demna will pay homage to the brand's history, underscoring the intimacy and rarity of haute couture.
So I wanted to start with where we are right now. Can you tell me what this place signifies to the House of Balenciaga?
This actual space salon where we're sitting is where the couture clients would come during the Cristobal Balenciaga era.
Originally, it was the salon.
It was the salon. This is the place where the founder of this house would come and create his legacy that we're living through today. It's symbolic. I don't know. It's symbolic for my showing respect to the legacy that I'm lucky enough to be in the middle of. And now the couture has been in making for over 1 year almost. And it's the first live event that we're going to have, even if the audience is going to be quite restricted and small.
What is your vision for Balenciaga Couture?
I would say, rather than my vision, my mission in couture is to actually give it a second life. I heard people saying couture is dead, who needs it? You know, it's completely useless. But I'm afraid of what's going to be in 20, 30 years.
After bursting onto the fashion scene with the brand collective Vetements, Demna took the helm of Balenciaga in 2015 as part of a radical modernization, including the Triple S, which set afire the ugly sneaker trend and helped Balenciaga surpass $1 billion in revenue in 2019, spawning 1,000 copycats. His fashion shows have been as disruptive as his designs, set in an enormous television studio on the outskirts of the Périphérique in Paris. He's cast runway models outside the traditional mold.
I like the fact that there's boys at a couture show. That's unusual, right?
And the Balenciaga Couture Show this week will feature men, women, and non-binary people, something that has not been part of traditional couture. Karl Lagerfeld occasionally featured men's couture on his Chanel runways, but it was not made available for sale.
I feel like talking about gender is like talking about the day before yesterday's news. You know, we shouldn't even be talking about it. We should just be living it in fashion.
Right.
And for me, The fact that you saw boys and girls and non-binary people in my cast, giving couture to men, for example, for me, they had to pay back somehow. So I wanted them to wear heels and to feel how it is to wear heels and to see what it does to a different type of guys.
Does some of this motivation to bring this into kind of mainstream fashion and culture come from having grown up in Georgia during the time of the Soviet Union? That wasn't a place where conversations around gender identity, homosexuality.
So I think there is a direct link for me personally with the culture in which I grew, and don't ask, don't tell. I mean, officially there are no gays in Georgia, you know. So obviously it was a taboo subject. I mean, I've been more terrorized by homophobia than the actual civil war. So I feel like it is in me. It's something that I have to, it's almost like a therapy in a way to do that. And since fashion is the mirror of our times, I think it is kind of part of my job, almost.
Yeah. What's your take on what we should learn from the last 16 months of pause?
You know, I like to raise questions through my work. You know, sustainability, like raising questions about consumption in general. I mean, it's kind of ironic because I'm in the middle of the system that encourages the consumption. But what I'm trying to do, bringing couture to it, is actually start a conversation about thinking twice about consumption. I think, you know, couture for me has something very modern in its concept because we only produce what somebody orders. So this is like the most sustainable way of consuming, but obviously the industry cannot live on that. But I think it is also about finding that balance, you know. This pandemic made me, before pandemic, I never thought about it. I was like a hamster in a wheel, just making stuff and making it and making it.
But the irony is you need to sell mountains of sneakers in order to be able to sustain both this couture collection and the business, right? You called it balance.
I think it is balance. I think it's balance, and it's also understanding what people want from fashion. I think that's the good starting point because they don't want all of that stuff that is being produced. They don't need it, they don't want it, and to be honest, they don't care about it. Fashion has become too busy to notice that, you know, the industry. And I feel that pandemic gave that somehow possibility to take a step back and to kind of look at it from objectively and to understand you don't need all of that.
Recognizing the impact fashion has on the planet is a step forward. But the scale of the problem is vast, and the necessary change can feel intimidating. Some designers prefer to work outside of the big houses, turning down lucrative offers instead to focus on their own brands. One such designer is the rising star of Paris fashion, whose studio in the 19th arrondissement is bursting with old garments that she repurposes to create her highly acclaimed collections.
Wow.
I met with Marine Serre to get her take on how the pandemic is changing fashion and to learn if that change is happening fast enough.
So this is our upcycled room where we are making garments from regenerated fabric. We take this from warehouses. It's all waste and already used garments.
Like, do they just sell it in bulk?
Yeah, so they have like tons and tons and tons of garment. When you enter into this place, you realize also how fashion industry have been like producing so much the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So basically, this is our past. I mean, this is the past of fashion, and we are like taking piece of it and selecting into that to make new garments.
And then no garment is the same either, right? Because every piece is different.
All of them, they are unique, and the only thing that repeats is the process of making. But indeed, the piece itself, like if this will be on the back of your shirt, all of the shirt will be different.
Right.
It was Marine's grandfather, a collector and second-hand dealer, who first taught her the value of vintage. Looking at fashion through an ethical and sustainable lens allowed Marine to foresee many of the issues that the industry is only just starting to wake up to.
You know, you clearly feel very deeply about the state of the world. You think deeply about the climate and the environment, but you're now saying you feel optimistic.
Well, I think before it was more about ringing the bell, alarming people, but because like in the fashion industry, no one was looking at that. And I was also working for this industry, so I do not want it to be a part of just being there, making one more skirt, you know. I was hoping that maybe, you know, some other people of the fashion industry were thinking about that too. We really have to think about, yeah, the environment that we are living in and the planet that we are destroying every day. So if I'm there, I have to at least making a small change.
So what is luxury to you? And what is that luxury customer that you are appealing to? What are they looking for?
I believe that you can feel it when you touch it. I think people that are in fashion for long, they will know, you know, how this thing is stitched. And even if you don't know, like this old thing, you will feel it. Like for me, it's really joyful when I take a cushion cover and I can transform it into a shirt that look cool. I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
What is the goal of the company?
I think the goal of the company is to question the fashion industry, try to resolve some of the question. I mean, basically every day we are doing that. And it's to make an ecosystem, a new ecosystem kind of exist.
A fashion business does not succeed on aesthetics alone. Now more than ever, those designs need to be rooted in clear values.
Sustainability. For me, it has become a very personal thing, really. Just maybe doing couture is my way of taking a minute of silence almost to reflect. This is why the show will be in a full silence.
No music?
There will be no music. It's the first time I never showed my work in silence.
Wow.
That minute of silence, it's very symbolic from what I just told you about fashion as an industry. All the white noise, things that don't matter.
I've seen designers injecting more of their personal values into their designs and asking provocative questions about fashion and its role in the world. Marine and Demna are asking how fashion can more positively impact the people in our communities, the societies we live in, and the planet we all share.